I'm a native. I went to Brandywine High School and I graduated in the 70s, early 70s, and went on to college in Ohio, a small Quaker college. I bummed around and done a little graduate work, different places where I've lived, but I'm in a graduate program right now at the University of Delaware. So my formal education is basically a Bachelor of Arts in American Literature, theater minor, and I actually have a minor degree in Russian history, poli-sci, which, that I don't know why. At the time, it was a long time ago. Seemed interesting. The Cold War was still ongoing in the mid 70s. So. Anyway, my career is just a career of serendipity. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. I moved with a friend in North Carolina and got a job as a journalism teacher in high school. I mean, I have American literature as and I did have a secondary degree in education. To be able to, I was qualified to teach. In those days, you could just write a letter to this, and you did, I was qualified in Ohio, so it was reciprocal in North Carolina. And it also became reciprocal in Delaware. It's to move from state to state at the time, you could with a teaching certificate. So I taught journalism. Yes, that's American literature, but it was, you're staying ahead on the fly of the kids because, well, you might know how to write or literature. Journalism is really different. And we put out a newsletter and, I was 21 years old. To get a good job like this, I was in North Carolina, 10 years after court-ordered busing, just after the Woolworth sit-in in North Carolina. I lived there for a couple of years, and I was able to, from that job, I went to be a PR director at a hospital, and from there, Time Life and marketing, which transferred me to Colorado, which transferred me back to here, and this is my home. So it just serendipity, and I ended up at the MS Society about 25 years ago, 1990, as their executive director. Just, again, a series of ad agencies, ad agency jobs in Philadelphia and here, and I was able to translate that into a good job with the MS Society. When I left, we were 15 people. We had four social work and allied support working with, I believe was just under 2,000 clients, persons with multiple sclerosis. We had a very strong fundraising department, special events. We did special event fundraising, and very small in the grants and individual donors. We just couldn't get that off the ground. Didn't have that. I think at the time we felt we were doing an awful lot of good. Not just support programs, we're doing physical programs. We paid for stuff too. We just paid for stuff. When people, in between what Social Security and SSDI would pay for, we would fill in the gap. So I was there when I left the MS Society was the year that I joined the ACLU board. I felt it was one organization that regardless Democrat or Republican would take a stand on civil liberties, regardless of politics. And I just remember as a kid, my father talking about the organization, I guess it was the Skokie riots, and he was really supportive of the ACLU standing up and letting, I believe it was the Klan at the time, to have a protest, and he said it was their right, and it just stuck with me. I think it would be difficult for any executive director to have an active executive director on their board. And I think it is, while it is good for an organization to have a former executive director on their board, I gotta wonder sometimes if it isn't more challenging to have someone with what do you say, too much experience. Do you know what I mean? In running a charity. So Judy Mellon and I both have a lot of that experience. And I suspect there are other former board members that, come to this with good heart, from another charity. So, but yeah, that's how I got to the ACLU. I was the executive director of the MS Society here in Delaware. We had a couple of rough years, and I would love to see some smooth sailing and some strength. We called it the Trump bump. Fundraising just went through the roof, and it was a lot of management challenges, and the former exec was unhappy. So it'll be interesting to see an organization now with, yes, I would say the last 2 years there was some rough riding, and I think began around 2018. I think Kathleen, there was a board meeting, I wasn't there, and I know she was upset, and I think it just spiraled downward after that. So yeah, the last 2 years were kind of rough, despite the Trump, the ability of the organization to get so much visibility and financial support during the Trump years. People were just are so dedicated, and they, there would always be a case presentation. We would always learn about some issue, and it makes you feel very involved with the community. And because once you tell anyone anywhere you're on the ACLU board, rightly or wrongly, they have an opinion of you and the involvement. This is not an organization that people are vague about. You just can't. I just can't go anywhere and someone asks me, "Oh, what's that?" That's never happened to me. Never have I ever have that, ever. Everybody always has an idea. So you do have to be kind of prepared. And I think we forget that board members do need to be prepared, even if you're getting an onslaught of materials, because people just assume as a board member, you know more than you do, because you don't. You know what I mean? They just expect you to. I think that the key thing that this chapter was successfully able to do was litigate. And they had a good litigation team, and I assume it's still in place because it was also lucrative. I mean, I always see it in that terms. I see it in fundraising, and everybody else sees it in legal terms. You see, I just have a different slant on everything, a different view. I look at it as agency sustaining. I look at it as, and a lot of board members and the organization looks at it as a moral imperative. And I see it as when the state pays money, they're not going to do that again. When people are, when it hurts, you tend to stop that behavior, at least visibly. So, but I also see, I just always thought things in organizational and financial terms, in development terms. Suddenly shocked. I can only interpret it, and because I've got a hindsight lens now, I don't know which is my original view or versus what I've come to believe, but the shock of losing the election, and the audacity in the very beginning, it started right after the election. Fundraising couldn't be stopped. We could get out of fundraising's way. The shock of the community was so great that you didn't have to ask. They were making a lot of money. And because people were scared, everyone was scared at the time, wondering, what does this mean? What does this mean for America? And it felt like we were going to be part of the good guys. We were the ones that were going to stand firm when he started the Muslim ban. It felt like we were the organization that weren't afraid to take the licks and to go out front. It felt like I had being part of the organization made you feel like you had a right to say it's what you're seeing is wrong. I'm a board member of the ACLU, and I can tell you this is wrong. And it it just, the landscape changed and everyone's attitude seemed to change who were actively involved with the ACLU or had been an active Democrat.
Okay. So,
I was at the Democratic National Headquarters in Delaware, the party, the planned party at 2016. And they were announcing, I believe Lisa Blunt Rochester had won that year, and some of the minor characters, and we were all waiting for the national news. And I want to say around 7:30, I saw Senator Coons' senior aide, Christy Gleason, tear across the ballroom with panic. I mean, panic. And I can't remember which way she was going, but she wasn't happy. And that was the first inkling. I think my friend and I realized something was wrong. Um, and and I remember everything just sort of slowing down. You just couldn't believe it. The ballroom started to get very quiet. And they were announcing some of the local wins. I remember though, and they were coming on the stage and people were just, they were just ignoring everything. People were milling around just in shock. So anyway, yeah. I wouldn't mind helping the new exec wouldn't mind being the heavy, getting the give and get in place for the new exec. It's very hard for an exec to get that in place, but it makes it easier for that person to help someone navigate their board involvement. Everybody starts off with a good heart, but you can't always, times change. And so I'd like to be able to help in that way. And I wouldn't mind helping build the fundraising portfolio back up. But I don't know, as a civil libertarian, how am I going to be helpful on that front? I feel like I'm compelled to do something, but I don't really know what to do. I joined a couple of local groups, and during this time period, trying to be involved locally, but helping things change and grow. I that's all I would like. I just have to say I think I'm one of the lucky ones to have been able to serve, and fingers crossed, able to serve again. Just very lucky. I don't think normal people in the world don't get these kinds of opportunities. That's what I think.